All right, in this explainer, we're digging into Pascal Boyer's work to tackle a huge and, let's be honest, pretty fundamental human puzzle. I mean, it's something I'm sure you've asked yourself at some point.
We've all seen it, right? These waves of unreality that can sweep through entire communities where totally intelligent people suddenly start believing some really bizarre things. So, how does this actually happen? Well, to get to the bottom of it, we've got to look at a real world and pretty wild example. And no, this is not something out of a movie. For decades, panics just like this have genuinely erupted in parts of Africa and Asia. People become absolutely convinced that sorcerers can steal genitals with just a handshake. It sounds totally nuts, right? But the consequences, like an angry mob forming in seconds, those are terrifyingly real. And believe it or not, this is not an isolated thing. So these stories, they're really just the tip of the iceberg. They're extreme examples of a much bigger human tendency. As Boyer puts it, our passions can be triggered by information that has incredibly low value. It kind of seems like we humans can handle a whole lot of unreality. And the pattern is it's striking. Whether you're looking at historical witch hunts or you're scrolling through modern online mobs, the dynamic feels almost exactly the same. A belief with very little actual evidence spreads like wildfire and ends up causing real-world harm. So, what in the world is going on here? Okay, so the most obvious answer, right, the one we all kind of jump to, is that people are just gullible. We tend to think of the human mind as this open container, just ready to soak up whatever it's told. But here's the crazy twist. The actual scientific evidence points in the complete opposite direction. But the reality is completely different. See, far from being these naive little creatures, our minds have actually evolved to be incredibly skeptical. Think about it from an evolutionary standpoint. Being purely gullible would be a total disaster. You'd be exploited constantly, so nature armed us with a defense system. And that defense system has a name: epistemic vigilance. You can just think of it as a built-in lie detector. It's always running in the background, checking sources, spotting contradictions, and basically acting as a firewall to protect us from being manipulated. But that just makes the mystery even deeper, doesn't it? If our minds are so vigilant, how on earth do things like penis-snatching panics get through that firewall? To solve this, Boyer says we have to completely change the way we think about the mind itself. We need to stop seeing it as a single, unified computer. Instead, we need to adopt what the philosopher Daniel Dennett calls a design stance. So here's the big idea. Your mind isn't like a single, sometimes buggy computer. It's way more like a Swiss Army knife, a whole collection of specialized tools, where each one was designed by evolution to solve a very, very specific problem. And each little tool in that Swiss Army knife, it runs a super simple, super efficient program. It spots a specific cue out in the world, and that triggers an automatic gut-level intuition, which then pushes us to act. And here's the kicker. This is all happening automatically, under the hood. We don't logically reason our way there. The tool just serves up the conclusion. Okay, so if our mind is a toolkit, you gotta ask the next logical question. What were these tools actually designed for? The answer to this is the key to the entire puzzle. They were not designed to find the absolute, objective truth of our modern world. Nope. They were designed for something much more basic: survival in our ancestral environment. The first core motive is a hypersensitive threat alarm. I mean, think about it from our ancestors' point of view, right? If you mistake a stick for a snake, no big deal, you just look a little jumpy. But if you mistake a snake for a stick, well, that could be the end of you. So evolution built our minds on a simple, powerful principle: better safe than sorry. Okay, motive number 2. This one is all about social survival. It's about belonging to the group. For our ancestors, getting kicked out of the tribe, that was basically a death sentence. So we evolved these powerful mental tools for signaling our loyalty. And what's one of the best ways to prove you're a trustworthy member of the in-group? You enthusiastically believe, share, and defend the group's beliefs. And this is where it all clicks into place. A bizarre rumor about witches or penis snatchers is the perfect fuel for these ancient mental tools. See, it has nothing to do with whether the rumor is true or not. It works because it describes a terrifying danger, which fires up our threat detection. And then passionately sharing it, that signals your commitment to the group. If you doubt the rumor, you look disloyal.
It can even lead to what's called competitive outrage, where everyone's trying to outdo each other to prove who is the most committed. So that brings us to the final and maybe most important piece of this whole puzzle. What we're seeing here isn't a bug in our mental software, it's a feature, a core feature of our social operating system. These simple, evolved intuitions are the very building blocks we use to create complex and, yeah, often very strange social realities. Boyer has this great example using a fictional group he calls the Poldovians to show exactly how this works. It starts with these gut feelings, these automatic intuitions. They're not like us, I can't trust them. Then our conscious brain comes in and invents a more complex reflective belief to justify that gut feeling, like the idea that all Poldovians must share some deep, unchangeable essence. And just like that, a rigid social category is born, not from careful reason, but from a gut feeling. And really, this is the big takeaway from all of this. What looks like a flaw in our thinking, our tendency to believe bizarre things, is actually a feature. It's a feature of a mind that was designed for navigating the threats of a world that, well, it doesn't really exist anymore. So our brains aren't broken. Not at all. They're just running old software on new hardware. And that leaves us with a really challenging final thought. If our minds really are optimized for survival over truth, what does that mean for the beliefs you hold most dear? Which ones are the product of a genuine search for what's real, and which ones are maybe just tools that help you feel like you belong? It's definitely something to think about.